Hey, hi everyone. My name's Marnie and I'd like to welcome you to Frankston City Libraries. Today we've got our Frank Talk chatting with rural romance author May Linnell. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which Frankston City Libraries operate, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations, and pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. And of course, I would like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders who may be joining us today. So, Maya, you call yourself a recovering owner builder. Now, Bottlebrush Creek, your latest release, centres around there's a lot of things going on, but centres around the renovation of a beautiful country cottage. Now, I'm keen to know how much of your own experience is in that book.
Thank you, Marnie, and thanks to Frankston Libraries for having me today. I'm always thrilled to be a guest and talking with people from libraries because I know that they love books as much as I do. And thanks to everyone who's joining in as well. Yes, Bottlebrush Creek definitely has a lot of my own experiences of building in it. My husband and I did some renovations on the first home that we bought. So we've renovated that. We had tradesmen in to do the stuff that needs to be done, like the electrical stuff and the plumbing stuff that needs to be signed off. But pretty much otherwise, it was all hands on deck. And, you know, we really got a feel for it. We loved the TV show, The Grand Designs, the Australian version and the New Zealand version. Also loved the block until it started to become about all the arguments instead of about the building. So the first few seasons were pretty good, and then it just kind of went to dogs. And what we decided to do was we thought we'd take on a really big project and build our own house here in country Victoria. The only thing was we didn't have the budget to pay someone to build the type of house that we wanted. And we thought, you know what, we've got endless time, we've got lots of enthusiasm, we'll have a crack at just about anything, let's make it ourselves, let's just build some bricks. So we set about building our own house, bricks first, and we went around and around the perimeter of our slab, building these 1,748 bricks that are all 600 by 300 by 300 deep. So they're quite chunky bricks. You can see them in the background, I think, between the banner and the bookshelf. So that was our little project, and there were so many different things through there, Marnie, that frustrated me, that delighted me, that surprised me, that really disappointed me, that was perfect to just funnel into a manuscript and take out a lot of the, take that to the extreme. So little things that had happened to me that I thought, oh gosh, that could have gone really badly, really quickly. I just thought I'd throw those things at my character, Angie McIntyre. And as you know, because you've read the novel, she's a beautician. She's a farm girl at heart, so she grew up on a farm. She's used to having a crack at doing things, but she's a little bit more at home with lotions, potions, waxing, and customers, and staying nice and neat and tidy day in, day out. So I thought it was a pretty big challenge for her.
Absolutely. And I did love following Angie's story alongside Rob. I don't know how much of the story you want to give away in this chat, but perhaps you want to touch on the aspect of family and perhaps what that meant to Angie arriving in Bottlebrush Creek and falling in love with this beautiful derelict cottage.
Yeah, absolutely, Marnie. It's not too much of a spoiler to say because it's on the back cover, but one of the things that Angie finds out really early on the piece, Rob drags her down to look at this beautiful cottage. It's got some land, 200 acres, so they can do a bit there. It's got orchard, room to grow. It's lovely, it needs a lot of work, and it's not until after she's done that tour, that walkthrough of the property, and really decided it could be something that they could see themselves, raising a family there, that she discovers that it's right next door to her in-laws' dairy farm. So poor old Angie, she's already fallen for the place, and then she discovers that little catch. So it puts her in a bit of a tricky situation because she hasn't had a very close relationship with her in-laws. They live 2 hours from where Rob and Angie are living. Angie lives quite close to her own family and has a very close relationship there. And so I really want to explore the notion of Angie being put right close to her in-laws that she doesn't have much to do with, and the most delightful mother-in-law slash she's really enthusiastic, and she's very keen to play a role and to be the grandmother that she's always wanted to be. So it kind of throws a bit of a spanner in the works for the way that Angie and Rob have done their time so far.
Absolutely. And I must say, I read the book on our audio platform, and I really loved it. And I'd listen to it and I'd feel outraged for Angie, like in a relationship situation where you've got all the stresses of a build and moving and children and in-laws. And I'd be like, you should have backed her up, or you should have asked her before you did that. So I don't want to give any of those things away because they're actually the bits that I loved in the book. But what I also loved was throughout it, I know you have a love for baking yourself, but I really loved the flow through the book with cooking and baking, and the love people show through their baking and their cooking, and how that can be portrayed and interpreted by other people.
Oh, thank you, Marty. That's really nice to hear. Yes, I do. I love baking, and I can't help but just kind of weave it in because, I do feel it is that language of love when you want to show someone that you've appreciated them, after a hard day's work. I love having something special for my family to, enjoy, and it gives me great joy to put together something for someone's birthday or, as a thank you, because we have some fantastic neighbours here that do, different things for us. One of us, our neighbour just to the east, let us borrow his cattle yards the other day. And so we send him over sourdough over the fence, and then we send over a box of eggs. And, next time we need to use his cattle yards, he's, yeah, come on down, no worries. I'd love some slice. I'd love some yo-yo biscuits. That's a really nice way that you can kind of trade without saying, now, how much do I owe you for this? Money makes things quite clinical, but that lovely trading of and bartering with baked goods is really nice. It's close to my heart.
Absolutely. And I was especially fond of Rosa when she would bring over baked goods, even though Angie's on a diet. She wants to be getting trim, taut, and terrific. And Rosa would bring over these sweet goods, which I was salivating over. But it was really, for me, her showing her love for Angie and trying to give her that olive branch all the time. Whereas I often saw Angie being resentful of it because it's something she loved. And I really looked at it being, also resenting the lifestyle she's currently choosing. And, there were so many things going on there for her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really had a lot of fun trying to think which battles I'd pick, what's going to be the conflict in my story. And, that renovation theme is a huge one, and living the next door to the in-laws is a huge one. But then there's also the, I guess, that shared history between Rob and Angie. And they're a couple, they've got a 2-year-old daughter together. But because he's been fly in, fly out for quite some time, there's a lot of gaps in their relationship. And they'd think that they would know each other really well, but it turns out when they're living together, working together, doing the house and doing time with his parents together, there's a lot they don't know about each other. And I think that gives a lovely little element of drama to the story.
Absolutely. Now tell me, how do you choose where to set your books?
Yeah, well, because it's a rural romance, I need to have a country setting. So I decided I'd choose Southwest Victoria because that's where we live. And the first novel, Wildflower Ridge, I should probably hold up. So Wildflower Ridge was my first novel. It came out in winter last year. And I set that in the Grampians because we'd spent a few years before we were married up in the Grampians. And it's a really beautiful place to be, rolling hills, beautiful properties, really nice farming land. So I thought I'd set the first book there. But then I wanted to change for Bottlebrush Creek. So it was quite easy to just transplant Angie and Rob to move down to the coast. And I created a fictional town called Port Fairview. But for anyone who's driven from Frankston across to this end of the Great Ocean Road, they will know there's a little town called Port Fairy. And it's a beautiful little fishing village. It's very popular in summertime, gets lots of tourists. But there's also, if you drive out the back of Port Fairy, there's a whole swathe of, dairy farms and beautiful rural land that you kind of don't see when you're just going there for the beach and for the cafes and for the great bookshops. So I thought, well, we went to look at some Highland cows out the back of Port Fairy a year or so ago, a couple of years ago when I was writing the manuscript. And it was a very different version of Port Fairy to main drag that I'd spent a lot of time in. But I thought, well, this is the perfect little setting. It's got the beach just there. It's got all this great farmland. Why not just plonk a dairy right here, and let's call it the Rosa and John Jones's dairy farm. And that's right where Angie and Rob decided to buy.
Perfect. Now tell us, can you give us a bit of an insight into your writing technique? Because I got a little bit of insight last time we spoke, and I saw you flinching when we were talking about how much of a pantser that Carly Lane is, and I am myself. So can you run us through your process and perhaps how long Bottlebrush Creek took to come to fruition, and of course Wildflower Ridge, your first novel?
Yeah, sure. So for people who missed it, I spoke with Marnie and Carly Lane, I think it was May, wasn't it? Late May, and had a great time chatting about all things books and writing, because I love Carly's books as well, and she's another Alan Unwin author. So Carly just flies by the seat of her pants, and that scares the heck out of me, because I like to be structured. I like to know, not in minute detail, where each scene is going, but I like to have a bit of an idea as to what my characters are doing, what their problems are, where they're going, and how it's going to end up. So I start out with just that seed of a couple of different ideas. So for Bottlebrush Creek, the seed of the idea was building, what type of stresses it can put on a relationship. I'm lucky I'm still married to my husband after the discussions that we had about paint colours and what type of things we put in the bathroom. So what if I wasn't so lucky? Let's think about how that could have gone really badly, really easy. So I just work on that little whisper of an idea, and I fill it with a lot of what if, and, pluck quite a few different scenarios and conversations out of my head from different things that I've read in the newspaper, or interviews that I've seen on Landline or in the Stock Journal or the Weekly Times. And I put it all together, come up with a rough idea of what I would like to have happen, and try and write towards that. So I do like to plan. I like to plot. I feel much more comfortable when I've got a bit of paper with the key points written down and whereabouts. It doesn't always stay that way. I'm currently working on the third book, and I'm on the second draft of my new manuscript, which comes out next winter, and that's Lara's story. So each of my stories tell one of the different McIntyre sisters. So Lara's story comes out next winter, and I'm just putting scenes that are right at the end, kind of threading them back through to be at the start, and then taking out scenes altogether and just tossing it in the bin. So I do a lot of chopping and changing in that later stages of my editing, but right at the start, I like to have that quite clear idea. This is what will happen. This is what will go wrong. This is hopefully how it will end, and work my way between those points. So yes, definitely lots of planning, plotting, post-it notes. We're talking, those little speech cards that you take for official speeches. Yes.
Yes.
Then one time I ran out of those, so I started writing them on the back of the little first prize cards that I'd won for the baking competitions. So there's a whole heap of them getting around with just scene ideas on them.
Well, it's funny that you should say that. So let's talk about competition baking.
Yeah.
So at what point are we going to come up against each other?
Well, I love a good bit of friendly rivalry, and I think it's great fun to just, put your baking where your mouth is, put your money where your mouth is, and have a crack, because it's just like when you're a little kid and you're entering things in the drawing competition at the show. The idea of baking for a couple of days before our local show exhausts me just thinking about it, but that thrill on show day, when I've got all my entries in, when I'm walking into that hall to see all the different blue ribbons and the red ribbons, and the nice aggregate trophies that they have for the different awards, it gives me a real thrill, and I think that's a lot of fun. Do you find that as well, Marnie? Because I know you do some serious baking.
Absolutely. I am a big one for our Red Hill show on the Mornington Peninsula, and also the Royal Melbourne show are my two big ones. And I should have got my rosette down to show off. But I it's that same feeling. It's almost the holding your breath as you walk towards where your thing is going to kind of be, and then you can let it out and go, oh, I didn't get anything. I remember coming in at Red Hill, and I had knitting, crochet, I had preserves, I had all sorts of things in scones, pikelets, you name it. And I walked in and I was like, oh, I got first place for my scarf. Excellent. Oh, I got a rosette. Like, I've never had a rosette. Oh, second place rosette. And I was like, hang on. how have I got a blue ribbon and a red rosette? I was like, I've got two things. And I realised that I'd actually been given second overall in knitting. And I was like, wasn't even on my radar. I remember ringing my mum and saying to her, there's a rosette. I've come first. So it was insane. And it was just, I just think these agricultural shows are so important, and they are the backbone of our communities to me. It's the way our communities come together. To me, it's a tradition. And I have so many, I'm a member of the Country Women's Association down here on the Mornington Peninsula. And I have so many members who say to me, oh, mine's not good enough. Mine's not good enough. And I said, but you've got to be in it. Like, you've got to be in it, and there's got to be participation. Otherwise, we lose these agricultural shows. There's no reason for them to happen anymore. So I'm all for giving it a go. And I have to say, I remember I did my grandma's famous pikelets. And when I say famous, in our family, my grandma's pikelets, and I got first at Red Hill Show. And that was such a nice feeling. So I'm all for it. And I think people like yourself and I, when we walk in and say we do these things, and people go, but you're young. And I say, everyone does it. Like, my nana did this when she was my age. My mum is only just starting to do it. I think it's really, really important. But I'm keen to know, what is your showstopper, Maya? So what is your number one thing that you can rely on to get that ribbon?
Well, I've had some good luck. It seems to fluctuate different years, because I'll enter a dozen different categories. So I do spend the 2 days before the show. I have to say to everyone, sorry, I can't do this, that, or the other because I'm show baking. And it sounds so funny. And I've turned down going to author talks that I really wanted to go to, because I knew that there was no way I was going to be able to drag myself through the shower and off to Port Fairy for an author talk on the evening of the day when I'd been baking competitively all day. So yo-yos did really well last year. And I used my lovely neighbour, whose cattle yards we grow. She gave me her recipe, and it just was bang on. So that's become my little specialty. And when it was the bushfires and they were talking about the Authors for Fireys auction, I thought to myself, what can I contribute? I really want to donate. You know, I could donate $50 myself to the cause, or maybe it would be nice if I had something that was a little bit special. And I saw some of the different authors, like Eliza Henry Jones had this beautiful, I think, basket of produce and homemade stuff. And I thought, well, do you know what? I'm not too bad at these yo-yos. How about I make those? And blow me down, I couldn't believe that someone paid $300 for an early copy of Bottlebrush Creek, so one of the first copies that rolled off the printing press before before they're in the bookshop. So she paid $300 for a box of my yo-yos and the book. So that was just really, really humbling to see that, people are so willing to contribute to a good cause, and it's a bit of fun. You know, I give away the recipe freely to anyone who wants it on my website. And I think it's really nice to be able to do that, to share good recipes and have a bit of fun with it.
Absolutely. And I will be downloading that recipe, because I do love a good yo-yo, but I have to say mine's the scone. Yep.
That's true.
The scone and the pikelet, but Royal Melbourne doesn't have a pikelet category. So it's got to be the scone. And not, was it last year? I think it was last year. I put the scones in the novice category for the Royal Melbourne show, and also a sponge cake. And I came up as, I think it was, I didn't get anything, did I get anything sponge? I think I might have come second or third in both categories. So this year, there isn't a Royal Melbourne show this year, but next year I have to go in with the big guns. So wow. I always say in CWA, we always laugh. I've been group president for the Mornington Peninsula, and one of my former group presidents, Barb, in our CWA cookbook, it's her quince jelly recipe that's in that book. And I always compete with her recipe. And I say every year, my aim is to beat Barb. So every year I have to beat Barb. So I'm looking at it now going, I'm in this open category with Barb. I've got to beat Barb. But I'm now going to be in with people who have been baking sponges and scones for 40 odd years. So that's a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, and I find that it depends on some years I've had blue ribbon sponges, other years they have been flat little pancakes that I wouldn't dare show anybody. And I think sometimes it depends on the humidity, whether it's often because our show is in February. So often it's stinking hot and you've got the ovens running and it's 40 degrees outside and nothing's rising properly. And the eggs as well, depending whether you've got the fresh eggs. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of variables that go into it. But I think that keeping the community spirit alive and providing entertainment for the generations to come and getting them excited about, these things that go back to basics, the baking, the chickens that are in the show, they're always great to go see, and the different vegetables and the eggs. So as a little kid, Mum was involved in our local show. So we'd have so much fun as kids, and my kids now get that. They enter the scarecrow competition, and, there's little entries in every different section. So I think it's a really nice thing to be able to do.
Absolutely. I always love seeing the kids' art. And Red Hill Show now has a Lego section. So the kids can make stuff from Lego and enter it. So I know my 5-year-old's very much looking forward to it next year. Now, talking all things country, you are a rural romance author, so I'm keen to know, I believe you have almost a farmer wants a wife style story of how you met your lovely husband.
I do, Marnie, and I think it's quite funny that I write rural romance because I have this lovely romance story that probably could have featured in a rural romance, because it's one of those things that if I had read an article about it, I might not have necessarily believed it. But back when I was in my early 20s, I was recently single, and I saw this article in the newspaper locally. And because I worked at a country newspaper, we would get all the little newspapers from around our region. And this is event at Harrow in Victoria. It was a singles event called Butte Blokes, and I was reading this article saying, poor Butte Blokes, it's going to be cancelled, not enough women coming from the city to meet all these country fellas, and just, there's no ladies in town, we've organised this event and it's going to fall through this year. And I thought, oh, gee, that's sad, all those poor blokes, they're out on their farms all day, no ladies coming through town. I should sign up. I should be community minded and sign up and get along to one of these things, because I'd thought about going to BNSs and whatnot, but I hadn't. So I thought, well, this is my chance. I'll go along. So I roped in a girlfriend who also loved country music, and she was single too, and we just went on a road trip, our first time that we'd actually really done anything together. She was only a new friend. And we had this fantastic weekend. They had to show people just around the local shearing sheds. They took us barbecue lunches, black tie ball for dinner. There was a four-wheel drive outing. And it was one of these really neat kind of weekends. And I met my husband there. And it was just really nice the way that it all kind of came together. And if I hadn't have read that article in the newspaper, if I hadn't have been working at the newspaper and we, hadn't got that particular Hamilton Spectator, then I wouldn't have heard about it. So it's just all these little interweaving bits that just all fell into place to kind of create a little puzzle with my husband.
Oh, I love it. And I have to say, this year's Farmer Wants a Wife, there was actually a farmer originally who doesn't seem to be going through to the actual show now, who was from Harrow.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yes, because I put him down as my fourth choice, because of course I was auditioning for Farmer Wants a Wife. So, but didn't make it through. So it's not as exciting as Maya's story, but there's always next year.
Well, it had me entertained, and I loved it when you told me about it, Marnie, because this Butte Blokes was deemed the Farmer Wants a Wife before it became the TV series. So when people ask me how I met Jason, then I would say, oh, it was a bit like the Farmer Wants a Wife. You got to kind of go and have a look at the area they live in and road test the country life, even though I was a country girl. Anyway, to start with, I wasn't from his area. So yeah, very nice.
I love it. And it sounds so much sweeter than a BNS ball. Like it sounds like they've really put some effort into it. And I love it.
Yeah, it was a lot classier than a BNS ball.
Now, you have mentioned your love of country music, and it happens to be a soft spot for me. So how much do you love Keith Urban?
Oh, look, Keith is wonderful. I was listening to him yesterday and just singing along. I love the stories that are inside the songs of country music. And it's funny because I used to hate country music with a passion.
Me too.
There you go. The one genre that I couldn't stand, but that's because I was listening to my dad's version of his
The
favourite
wrong country.
So I was listening to Kenny Rogers. I was listening to Slim Dusty, all those things that just didn't float my boat. And then I went overseas in America. The only place that I could go, because I was only 20, so I couldn't go into real bars. But the other friends that I made were going to this place, and it was a country music bar. So it had line dancing. It was a lot of fun. And all of a sudden, bam, I was onto it. Tim McGraw, Keith Urban, all the good guys. And from there on, as soon as I got back home to Australia, I went and bought all those CDs. When I worked at the newspaper, I was lucky because I got to interview Lee Kernaghan and Troy Castle-Daly and Bill Chambers, Casey Chambers, a lot of the really cool artists, and Adam Brand. So I'd go along with my little media pass and interview them and completely fangirl all over these country stars. I didn't mention to them that I was only a newcomer to country music, but I've threaded it through my books as well, because I do feel it is such a nice part of Australia to be able to talk about modern Australia country music. And you'll see that in Wildflower Ridge, we've got Penny listening to different country music, and Tim, her the main lead character in Wildflower Ridge. And then I've also got a little bit, not as much, in Bottlebrush Creek too. So I like just threading in those little bits.
No, I love it. Your story is so similar to mine. It's uncanny. And I must say, I went to Nashville. And the only reason I went to Nashville was to buy cowboy boots. So we were doing a tour of America over 3 weeks. So we'd been to San Francisco, we went to Louisville in Kentucky, and I said, I really want to drive to Nashville because I want boots. And there's a shop there that has buy one, get two free. And while we're there, we may as well go to Nashville. So I had a full day in Nashville and 2 nights. And I just remember walking down Broadway at 10 o'clock in the morning and having country music blaring out of every single place. And it was just, to me, Nashville is exactly as you imagine it's going to be. And that's why I've fallen in love with it, with Nashville. And I've been there, I think, 3 times now. But I didn't like country music before I went to Nashville. And I fell in love with Maren Morris, Keith Urban, Luke Bryan. There was just some really cool musicians coming out. And so the next time I went back, I went to CMA Fest, which you have got to get to at some point. I've been there twice. It is amazing. And that's when I discovered Kane Brown. He was just a newcomer at the time. And I'm thinking, this guy's voice is so soulful, and, you know, yet it's country. And it was amazing to be introduced to brand new country. And those guys are now playing stadiums, whereas at the time they were playing the Riverfront stage on the Cumberland. But I do have to tell you, Keith Urban gives really good hugs.
Oh, no way.
And he smells amazing. I met him the week before Christmas last year when he opened the Sydney Coliseum. So I was one of 10 fans in the fan club. I got to meet him. So I can assure you he is just as lovely in person as you expect him to be.
Oh, I'm jealous. That trumps poor Lee. I feel sorry now, Lee. All these years I've been so excited that I got to meet Lee and Troy and Adam. Now I'm feeling very ripped off. I haven't met Keith yet.
Yeah, well, and I have to say, listening to your media pass story as well, that was me at the Denny Ute Muster. Which have you been to? Was it you?
Yes.
Yes. Denny Ute Muster. It's another world. The Denny Ute Muster.
It's an eye opener. It's you know, I did it once. I won't need to do it again. I think it's really very much a young person's game.
I've done it 3 times. So I did the 10-year anniversary, and that was as a punter. I took a ute up there, and I was working for an automotive company at the time, so I took a ute up there. But the next time I had my media pass, and I was interviewing Shannon Knoll and the McClymonts and the Wolf Brothers, and that's when I fell in love with a different side of Australian country. And aside that, traditional, like really traditional country people could sort of say it's not country, it's rock. And I'm like, well, it's got a twang and a banjo, so it's country. But no, I absolutely fell in love with it. So I completely understand where you were and where you are now. So absolutely. Now, Can you give us a little bit of insight? What is your favourite part of the publishing process? We'll just go back to books.
Yeah. So when I'm writing, I think my favourite part is definitely towards the end of the manuscript, when I know where I'm going, where I've got that enthusiasm, I've got that 50, 70,000 words behind me. So I know it's not just a fizzer of an idea, because when you're at that 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 word mark, you're still a bit nervous that maybe it's just been a wasted 20,000 words. But when you're on the other side of that 50,000 and you know that, yes, this has legs, these characters are really working well, they're talking to each other, they're talking to me, we're going somewhere together. And little pieces kind of come to me, and I just have to get up in the middle of the night to write them down. And then when I sit down at the keyboard to put it together, when the ideas just fly, and I'll be typing away, and it's probably faster than my conscience can, I couldn't say out loud to you, this is the scene that I'm going to write, Marnie, and this is going to happen, this, because my fingers and my head are just working together to just get it on the page. And so I love that little thrill when it's working really well and the words are flowing. So I'll have snippets of that throughout writing the first draft. That's probably where the most creativity comes in. But when I'm also editing the second draft, so which is what I'm doing at the moment for book 3, there'll be points in there that I'll be rereading. I've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. I've marked up the manuscript. It's an absolute mess. If anyone picked it up, they'd go, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, this page directs to that page, and that one goes there. But then I'll know that so I'll change something around. I know that I'll need to write a bridging scene, and I start writing this thing going, insert bridging scene here where Toby says to Lara, we need to do, instead of writing out what I'm going to do, just write it, man. So I'll start writing it, and all of a sudden I've written 2,500 words for the day, which is, that's a lot more than I would normally write, completely unintentional. And then the next day I'll go back and I need to, then bridge that scene to the next scene, because I've taken a huge chunk out and it's just kind of smoothing over. So when I get to that point, and then there's 3,000 words for the day, and my husband will come home from work and I'll say, you wouldn't believe it, I've just written 5,500 words in the last 2 days, which is huge for me. So I love it when it flows, and it's so enjoyable to write when you know where you're going and you've got that clear idea and your brain's working in tandem in favour. So that's probably my favourite bit, when it's all flowing beautifully. It's a real
that does sound amazing. And I know writing myself at the moment, I get to points where I'm stuck. How do you get through those moments? Is it just to write, just stream writing?
Yeah, so I find that if I'm stuck on a bit, I usually find if I can go for a walk, then it'll really come together and it'll amalgamate. Or I chat it over with one of my neighbours if I'm going for a walk with. There's a really lovely neighbour just over the road to our north, and she loves a good 6 a.m. get out, pound the pavement for half an hour down our quiet country lanes, no traffic, just the two of us and a lot of stars and cows inside of our road. So that's a really nice time to kind of talk through some plot points where I go, oh, look, I'm just, do you think this would happen? If you were in that situation, would you do that? So I get to kind of spitball it every now and then with someone else. And then those solo walks, they're quite good as well, because if I don't have a podcast in, if I don't have the country music in, and I'm just walking by myself with the cows and the frogs and, the foxes that run across the path, then I can really make some progress. So that's probably my best thing, is just kind of, putting my brain to work while I'm not sitting at the computer is probably good. But then also, because I'm contracted for the next book, I have to deliver. So I can't just say, I'm not going to work this week. I have to sit down and write. So I'll go to a different section. So I don't jump around huge. I don't go, okay, I'm at the start, but now I'm going to go write the end piece. I don't do that. But I can go, okay, put in that little placeholder that says insert scene where Toby tells Lara this, and then go to something else that I know is going to happen, which is, not very far from where I'm at. Just okay, well, here's where I have that planning meeting where they're going to nut that out. So yeah, does that help?
Absolutely. And I think It's funny when you said you don't jump around, because I know after us having the conversation with Carly Lane, that's exactly what Carly and I do.
Yeah.
So I've written my final chapter, and I've written my first chapter, and then I might move to chapter 7, and then I'll go and do something else, and then I wonder why I haven't worked on it for 3 months because it doesn't have that flow. So I'll tell that one story that's going to be the, I guess, epitome of that chapter and the main focus of that chapter, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm done. There's 1,500 words done. Do you have any, like, in your writing space, do you like writing in silence? Do you have music going? How do you like to structure your day?
Yeah, it's changed up with each manuscript. It had to be pure silence when I was writing my first draft for Wildflower Ridge, because I just couldn't focus. And then when I was doing the first draft of Bottlebrush Creek, I was finding it a bit too quiet, so I decided that I would change it up and I'd find this playlist. And because I like all types of music, but for some reason I decided I'd try a morning motivation, just a Spotify playlist that they created, and it was music that I would never choose for myself to sit down and listen to. There was a heap of different stuff that I hadn't even heard of, but I would put that on each day, and as soon as it got to about the second song, it's like, okay, that's what I'm doing. This is what I'm here for. I'm here to sit down and write. Let's go. And so I got to know that soundtrack back to front, inside out. It was Ed Sheeran. It had, Miley Cyrus, heaps of different things that I wouldn't normally put on the radio, but it just seemed to work. And that was really good. But then I did find I got a bit distracted, and I'd go down rabbit holes because I was letting my fingers do all the writing and not much of the head doing the writing. So I feel like I wasted quite a few words doing that. But then, I'm looking at my computer desk right now, and the manuscript I'm currently working on, it was 108,000 words, and I'm only supposed to write between 80 and 100. So 108,000 words is just way over what I need to be. And I've cut it back to 104,000 words, but I've been listening to Classic FM for this particular manuscript and just streaming ABC Classic. Sometimes I'll have the actual morning show on with Russell Torrance, and he's got this beautiful Irish accent that's, or Scottish, Scottish. Beautiful Scottish accent, very easy to listen to. Or other times I just do it with the ABC Classic 2, which is 100% music. There's no news breaks, there's no talking, so I don't get as distracted. Whereas yesterday, because I'm editing, I'm not doing as much of the thinking, it's just more data entry most of the time. I had Keith Urban on. So I kind of go all over the place.
I love it. Now tell me, you're not in lockdown now, like kids are back at school. How did you go the first time around, having the kids at school, having the kids at home in your writing environment? Did you find you got much done during that time, or did you just have to push through regardless?
Yeah, I found that really tricky, Marnie, because I have 3 children, and they're not quiet little children. They're noisy, and they'll be yelling at each other. They'll be calling from one end of the house to the other about, hey, have you got this? Or why are you in my bedroom? And so there was a lot of, I guess, nervousness and worry about how long it was going to go on for, because, again, I've got this contract that I need to have this manuscript to my publisher. And what I did, because I think I was when COVID hit about the 80,000 mark of that manuscript. So I was close, I knew I wasn't far off finishing, and I would get up early in the mornings to write before the kids start school. So I'd be writing from 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock, which doesn't sound like much time, but it wasn't possible to do the writing while the kids were asking me, how do I use the computer, or what's the square root of blah, blah, blah. And I go, I don't know. I'm a words girl, not a numbers girl. So, yes, I found it very challenging. I had to, I guess, be a bit kinder on myself. Instead of saying, for a normal writing day, I would try and get 2,000 words done when I'm first drafting, 5 days a week, and consistently go about it. Whereas with COVID, I had to say, well, I've only got a tiny portion of the time that I would normally have, so I can't get as much. And then we've also got the stress of having everyone home all the time. So yeah, I found it tricky, but I got through it. But I am also very much dreading if we go down into lockdown again, because we've got cases popping up in Portland, Port Fairy, Warrnambool. It's kind of just starting to recirculate, unfortunately. So I do feel like we probably will go into lockdown again. So I'm trying to work as hard as I can on this manuscript to get as much as I can done so I can send it off before they come back home, which I'm pretty sure is going to be what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in it right now, so we've got the extra week of school holidays. But it's interesting. You say you're working between 6 and 8 a.m. because that's exactly what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And getting that have to done, because I'm lucky. Poppy is a late sleeper. So I was using that 2 hours, and then anything else that got done for the day after that was a bonus.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. This time around, I too am aiming to be much kinder to myself. But I think trying to carve out that time in the morning just for you is so important. So at least you feel like you've got something under your belt, whether it's proofreading something, creating new text, whatever it might be. I think you certainly had the right idea there.
I think that's, yeah, it's going to have to be that way. Otherwise it's just too frustrating. And I'd spend the whole day sitting at my computer right next to the kids where they're, doing their online learning with the laptop, feeling increasingly frustrated with them because they need my help the whole day long. It's not like I can just send them off and let them do it. So yeah, getting it done early, definitely.
Absolutely. Now tell me, what has been a career highlight for you?
Wow. I've been really lucky. There's been a few, Marnie. I've had very exciting news yesterday that Bottlebrush Creek made the Australian fiction top 10. It was number 6. It was number 6. So that's fantastic for a little old country girl who writes about small towns and the things that she knows and the community she loves. To see that that's really come across with readers and people have been keen to pick up the books has been just wonderful. So that's probably a recent highlight. And also when Wildflower Ridge also made the same June top 10 last year as well. So that was really cool. But then it also made the Better Reading Top 100. It came in at number 79. And I didn't realise just how exciting that would be. But the repercussions of that have been wonderful because it means that it's on the stores of all big W's for the next 12 months, as opposed to when the shops just get it in and then sell out and then that's it, it's all gone. With it making that Better Reading Top 100, it's been really good. So people are picking up Penny's story and finding out about the McIntyre sisters that way. And it's also got the first chapter of Bottlebrush Creek in the back. So if people get this story, and they can also get it at all good bookstores as well, this smaller version, you can see if you kind of put them together. This is what
that's
they call
the version I've got.
Yeah, so they call this one the C format, and they call this one the B format, which you think this would be the A format and that would be the B format, but anyway. So it's been really, really nice, and I've been very fortunate to see the both books come onto the romance best-selling charts as well in the Sydney Morning Herald and the Sunday Age, right next to Nora Roberts and Danielle Steele. So they were huge highlights for me. We've had champagne a couple of times to celebrate these different things. It's been really nice.
Oh, that was so awesome. It was so nice to see it happen for you in the last week. I had been following that, as you know, to sort of see how it was going. I have to also say Wildflower Ridge is about to go onto our unlimited collection on our digital library. So that means you don't have to wait to read it. It's there, it's ready to go. You just log in with your library membership and read it straight away without having to reserve it. So that's great. So it means no one has to wait. So if you haven't read Wildflower Ridge, jump online and you can read that from our digital collection. Now tell me, what is on your reading pile at the moment, Maya? And what are your go-to authors? Are there certain authors you always sort of are attracted to?
Yeah, definitely, Marnie. I'll always pick up Fiona Lowe's books. She is based in Geelong and she's wonderful. She writes these fantastic Australian family sagas. She's great. Natasha Lester, she does beautiful historicals. She's amazing. She does such a beautiful job with her background in marketing. She has a fantastic social media feed. So she's really great to watch. Rachel Johns always floats my boat, as well as Carly Lane and Fleur McDonald. One of the really cool books, I was lucky to read an early version of Nicole Hurley-Moore's book. Now, this is McAllister's Legacy, and Nicole's a great author as well. So she's with Alan Unwin, and this has got this really nice little gold fever theme through it. So if you like a bit of gold rush, you'll like that one. That's real romance. And I'm also reading another rural romance at the moment. This is Mandy Magro's latest book. Now, she's based up in far north Queensland, and she's been writing, I think she looked like there's about 15 books that she's written. She's got a very strong focus on rural romance, and I'm really enjoying diving into that one as well. So my next up, I'll be reading, I think, is historical will be up next.
Nice. Now, what do you, where can people find you online?
Yeah, sure. So I have a website, and that's mayalinnell.com. And on my website, you'll find my blog, because I blog for the Romance Writers Australia, interviewing a different author or two different authors every month, one for my newsletter, which goes out monthly, and one for Romance Writers Australia. I have giveaways that go out with my newsletter most months. I have recipes. I have behind the scenes information about all things writing, baking and gardening, because I do love getting out in the garden. And I've got a big dahlia patch and rose patch. So I talk about the different things that I'm up to when I'm not at my desk. And I also have Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is probably my favourite one because I love photography too. So that's maya.linnell.write. So if people would like to come along and see what goes on in our little country, where we've got lambs at the moment. So there's a lot of lamb spam. They're very photogenic, our little lambs. So yeah, I love hearing from readers. So if people wanted to get in touch and say what they liked about the books, that's always something to make an author smile.
Absolutely. I must say, I love the picture of the lamb that came up to your window the other day. That was so cute.
Well, it was funny because I literally did a double take. I was walking along, with my cup of tea. Oh, there's a lamb at my window.
But I do know you've been in the garden recently, getting all the seeds ready for the next season and germinating them inside. So I have to say, you're a woman after my own heart. So I've always wanted my country property. So I very much love following you on Instagram. So
thank you, Marnie.
And your blog is Kiss and Tell with Maya Linnell, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So I've got a page of the website that's got all the different blogs, and I've started putting in, because I do a lot of blogging for other people when a book's out as well. So I write quite a few different articles for other people's blogs, and I've just started linking them back to my blog so that people can find them all in the one spot instead of having to go on a wild goose chase. So there's quite a few articles. The most recent one that I quite enjoyed writing was about my dad's motorcycles and how his love of motorbikes influenced that little subplot inside Bottlebrush Creek with the vintage motorbikes.
Rob's motorbikes.
Yeah.
I did like the idea of the Harley Davidson with the sidecar.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
And
I won't give away the ending there, but I really liked it.
Oh, thank you. That's a very special motorbike. As kids, we used to go for rides, and at the local show, there's horse rides and there was also sidecar rides. So Dad would take his sidecar in and give kids laps around the oval for $1 for the Show Society.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we will have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us, Maya. We love chatting to you.
Thank you, Marnie. It's great to be in your company, and so nice to chat with someone with so many parallels with the country music and the baking. So thank you very much. It's been a great chat.
Maya's book is available via our digital library, but you can also purchase it via Robertson's Bookshop, and we'll pop a link to Robertson's in our social media when we share this video across our social media channels.